excited to be here and talk about something that I love, which is active aging, or what I started to call proactive aging, meaning we're actively taking steps to increase our longevity or the length of our life, but maybe more importantly, our health span, the quality of our life. So, maintaining muscle is a cornerstone of our general health and our vitality. Having a robust foundation of muscle is critical, not for just doing the things we love to do every day, but resilience, should we get injured or ill, and also for many bodily processes. So I'm hoping to convince you today how important it is to build and maintain muscle. I'm going to start by telling my own story and how I learned how important it is. Then I'm going to go into talking about some of these processes and why they're so important to us. And if we have time, we'll do a demo showing progressive overload, making sure that we're not just doing the same thing every day and thinking we're keeping our muscle. It takes effort. It takes consistency. Being active is not the same thing as actively growing muscle. So, my story begins back in the 80s. Who remembers the 80s? Big hair, leisure suits, great music. So, I took a PE class in college. It was my first weight training class. Never lifted weights before. And it was pivotal for me because I was a skinny kid who got picked last for dodgeball and the first victim. Anybody else be there? Yeah. So I realized I had some athletic ability and it was very empowering. But what's happening in that class was there was an older couple, older my age, grandparent age, but to a 19-year-old, they stuck out. So I was curious and I watched them, and turned out they were part of a research project way back in the 80s. So whoever was doing that was way ahead of their time. So when they walked in, they kind of looked. They wore baggy clothes, and I was very curious about how they were lifting because I just started that journey too. So I saw them lift more weights over time, and I saw them change. They walked in with a different step. They had energy. They even changed their clothes. They were wearing more tight-fitting clothes. This is fascinating to me because in my family, I didn't have any elders who showed this kind of progression, and it stayed with me my whole life. So life goes on, and I decided to pursue athletics because, I kept thinking about those dodgeball days. So I started running, and I played tennis, and the natural progression into co-ed ice hockey, like you do. And then I fell in love with road cycling. So now I'm in my 40s, but I was in the best shape of my life because I really was going after this sport, loved it. I had big cycling quads because I was putting in hundreds of miles and my cardiovascular system was terrific. So my goal was to finally get onto a women's racing team. And I got invited. I was so excited. 2 weeks later, I was coaching a team and training ride. This is a fundraising ride for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I had a terrible crash. Yes, I was wearing a helmet, but I landed on my face. To this day, I don't know what happened because I had amnesia, which is what happens with a traumatic brain injury. I hit here, I broke my jaw, I broke my right orbit, had an open fracture on my arm, a lot of soft tissue damage. I was in and out of the hospital for surgeries for 2 years. Well, I broke my jaw, so I had my jaw wired. I went from being very muscular, 128 pounds, to losing 25 pounds in 3.5 months. They took off the wires because I'd lost so much weight. Well, as our bodies do, I'd been starving basically for 3 months. I put on a lot of weight. But I wasn't able to work out, so I put on a lot of body fat. We call this skinny fat. It's not my term, you guys. I don't love it. But it does show that you can have a normal BMI, look thin, and actually have an excess of body fat. So I went from over here being best shape of my life to over here. All of a sudden, my labs are different. I had insulin resistance. My inflammation was high. I literally aged years in a year. What also happened was my friends started telling me, Peggy, you're different. You repeat yourself. You don't remember our conversations. I knew the day I started getting emails back that I didn't remember sending them, that something big had happened. So my doctor sent me to a speech therapist, and they do their prerequisite 3 questions. Remember these 3 things. I was tested over and over again. I couldn't remember any of them. So I was told I now had a disability. In the brain injury world, it's called an invisible disability. So I had a decision to make. What was I going to do about this? I had young children. I had goals. I'd left IT, went into coaching because I wanted to spend more time with my children. And back then, we didn't really know that much about traumatic brain injury. They just kind of said, good luck. But I had a nurse who came up to me and said, you know, I heard that Tai Chi really helps. So I just happened to get a Groupon from my neighborhood Tai Chi center. So I showed up for class, and I was like, yes. And this class had been training together for some time. So I'm trying to follow, and I'm not doing very well because my balance was still not so great either because of the head injury. So I was frustrated. I'm like, this is the one thing I can do, and I can't do it. I walked up to the Sifu and said, would you give me private lessons? And he said, yes. I think about 4 months in, he kind of regretted it because I was a tough student. I could not remember. I had to do it over and over and over again, and I couldn't remember, and I couldn't remember. But what I learned in that process is that's how we heal. That's how we keep our brain alive and active, is by doing things over and over again. And it was a new thing. It's novel. So I was doing something at the time that I didn't realize was super important for healing my brain. Now, the surgery on my right arm was done, so I could start lifting weights again. And then things really started to change for me. I started remembering things. I started feeling less aged. I looked less aged. My labs started changing again. Brain injury, guys. I'm having a moment. All right, so I fast forward. I'm going back to work. And I'm coaching. And I'm getting the clients who have these difficult times of their life too, because they heard my story. People who have had maybe a bone marrow transplant was one of them. That's really significant life change. I have people with Parkinson's. And some of the same things I saw in myself, I saw change them. I saw gaining muscle made a huge difference in their survival, in the way they felt about themselves. I was also teaching classes. I was doing personal coaching, and one of my students brought in a guest. And I was setting up, and I heard their story, and I said, excuse me, I just was listening to what you had to say, and would you mind if I bought you some coffee? I really want to learn more about you. So the woman was a researcher for NASA, and she got some funding to working on building up muscle in astronauts, because what happens to them remind her of what she saw in her mother's nursing home. People in her mother's nursing home reminded her of what the astronauts look like coming out of space. Why? Because anti-gravity. They're losing muscle. And to this day, there's still a problem, but it's not as bad as it was back in 2010, 2011. So this solidified what I already knew of how important muscle is. Not just the aesthetics, because that's our culture kind of turns towards that a little too much, but in aging, it is critical. So what are those critical things? Metabolism. To be metabolically healthy, using your muscles is super important, and the more muscle, the better, because this is where we put glucose. So if we eat and we don't have a place to put it, we get insulin resistance, which is exactly what happened to me, which can then lead into prediabetes and diabetes. And guess what? When we're working out, we empty. Then we have a place to refill. This helps with management of our weight as well. Our muscles are amino acids. Amino acids are transformed into really important things like T cells for our immune system, right? Proteins that reduce inflammation. We all know about inflammation from COVID. When we lift weights, we also produce something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is why we call it BDNF. This is like fertilizer for your brain. So this helps improve memory, helps those neurons fire, and that was one of the things that helped me. We're also realizing how important it is for mental health. In psychiatry now, we're looking towards nutrition and exercise as a prescription, as well as maybe reducing meds. So all of these things, so when you're lifting weights, when you're doing a resistance routine, you're not just doing a little bit for your health. You're doing all of these things for your health. I mentioned that being active doesn't actively grow muscles. And that's really important because I see people doing a lot of showing up every day and working out. But if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're not challenging your muscles. And you're not challenging your brain either. Because repetition is not helping your brain. It's the novelty of not only your workouts, but anything else you're doing as a hobby. So we call something progressive overload. I want to demonstrate that. So I don't know all your health history. So if you want to do this with me, I encourage you to do so. So the most basic thing we need to do is to get up and out of a chair. Now I found when I had one arm that was working, that was pretty difficult. Some of you today may not be able to get out of your chair without the use of your hands. I encourage you to start there. If today you have to use your hands, terrific, but what I want you to do is use this opportunity every day to get up and out of your chair to improve your leg strength, because leg strength is the most important strength based upon the research right now. Now, I believe we have to work out a whole body, but if you choose one thing, it would be your leg strength. So what you can do, and everybody has a chair at home, is, okay, I'm going to put my hand here to help myself as if that's what I need to do. I call this nose over toes. Nose over toes, stand up tall. Nose over toes, reach for the chair and sit down. Okay, awesome. You can do this 10 to 15 times, 2 or 3 times a day, and build your leg strength. You don't need a gym, although I go there all the time. I recommend it. But this is accessible to everybody. Okay, so let's say you're like, okay, I don't have to use my hands. All right, cross here, nose over toes. Up tall, nose over toes, back down. You have just progressed. You've made it more challenging. You progress either by doing the number of repetitions, the number of days, or you make the exercise more challenging in a number of ways. And let's head there again. So let's say you're here and you're like, oh, I got this. All right, the next thing you do is a squat. Tap and up. Tap and up. All right? Watch your chairs, hopefully don't slide. Okay, y'all, now when you lift, I want you to start squeezing your butt. Tap and squeeze. Yeah, I do watch people's butts for a living.
All right, so you're like, I got that. All right, so you can increase the repetition, say it with me, or the number of days you do it. All right, what's the next thing? This is easy, Peggy. All right. Well, you hold a weight and you do the same thing. Tap, squeeze. Okay, so you're holding any kind of weight. That's your next progression. All right, so you're like, I do that all the time. All right, squat, jump, right? Because the jumping, by the way, I didn't mention it, when you build bone, you build muscle. And when you lose bone, so when you lose muscle, you lose bone. A lot of people don't make that connection. They're important. They live together. All right, so now you've got the jump. You jump on a box next. I don't have one here, but I do it, and I'm almost 65. I have clients who are in their 70s who do it. You work your way there. Meet yourself where you're at. One, don't get injured, because if you do get injured, then you go back the other way. So if you're not sure what you're doing, find somebody to coach you a little bit. But this is one exercise that you can progress to improve your leg strength. And like I said, it's accessible to everybody here. All right, so I know it's getting late. Yes. If you're what, sorry?
How to get out of the chair.
So you can. One of it's the chair. So this chair has, I don't know if you notice, it kind of has a lip up. So I was adapting to that. But yes, there are ways you can put, but that's not as important as the nose over toes, I believe, from my experience, because this is what brings you into a forward position. Sure, try it. Yeah, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with what you just said. It's a great question. I just feel for most people that little bit of, if I'm here and I'm just lifting, the problem is if I don't have great balance, I could fall back. And even just do it. Here, I've got pretty good leg strength, but I'm looking at the average person not knowing what their leg strength is. I think that the nose over toes is probably a little safer. That's just my opinion. What was I going to say about that too? All right, it'll come back to me. Oh, I know. Quote. So one of my favorite quotes, it's anonymous, is do something today that your future self will thank you for. Do something today your future self will thank you for. And I think one of the most accessible things for us as we age is growing muscle, maintaining muscle. It's never too early to start. And it's never too late to start. I had a client who was in his 80s. It was the first time he ever exercised. He was adorable. He first came and he wasn't sure if he wanted to do this. He'd sit down and go, "My name's Peggy," and he'd have his paper, and he'd check this out, and then finally he started joining, and then eventually he brought his daughter and his granddaughter. So this man who never exercised before, in his 80s, and then I had 3 generations out there. It was one of the most touching moments. So I will open it up now to questions. Yes? So here's the thing, is that we are all bio-individuals. So for me personally, I assess everybody. I have people who come after illness. I have people who are super fit. And it just depends on the person. It depends on what I find in my assessment of your health history, your exercise history, and your goals. And then I meet you where you are, and we figure out what's the best thing for you. So you're right, consistency is key. Now, if we're looking at research, the research is saying 2 45 to 50-minute strength training workouts a week will typically be enough for most people. But again, there's a lot of other factors. Oh yeah, you're moving. Well, there's some days I'm moving for multiple hours because I'm working with clients. But I train personally an hour probably 6 days a week. But I want to make a caveat on that too. I've been training a very long time, so I can do that, and I have enough recovery where somebody who's just starting, I probably wouldn't start them with more than 2 days a week.
What does one of your sessions?
Okay, again, it depends on the person. So, but there is a format of typically starting with a dynamic warm-up. Sometimes doing some myofascial tissue release first. Again, that's if people have certain areas where they have trigger points, and then go into dynamic warm-up. And then usually we'll have some strength training. Depending upon their fitness, we'll do some power and some mobility, and then finish up with a cool down. So that would be the strength training piece. But here's the thing: this is about building muscle. This talk, but there are many other aspects of aging. One is mobility as well, being able to move well, right, and being able to get in and out of situations, and that would be, for instance, tripping, being able to recover from that, the balance. It's all important. Yeah. Yes.
Hey, what's your...
So,
what was the question again now?
so the question was, what's my take on the balance between weight training and aerobics, or doing cardiovascular work? Well, that's a really good question. And again, it comes back to the individual, so I can answer generally. I was just going to use a term. So the idea of the steps is still a really good one because we're moving every day. 10,000, there's no magic number to it. That was decided in a lab. It had nothing to do with human physiology. Bringing the heart rate up into, I don't want to get too technical because we talk about zones. Bring the heart rate up and down into a safe zone. And that's why I'm not going to talk about specific zones because, again, this is very bio-individual, is that bringing the heart rate up and back down, now we're saying, even a few minutes a day adds to longevity. But we're all at very different fitness levels. So there are people I would do a HIIT for 15 minutes. So this is what I'm saying is the bio-individuality of it is really important, and it's based upon assessment, it's based upon your health, because I don't know what your background is. For you, a walk might be all you can do, where I have somebody else over here and we're running sprints behind my center, right? So it really, before you do anything, I highly recommend first talking to your physician, because there might be things that you shouldn't do based upon your health history. And then really look at what your goals are and go after them in a way that, one, you're not going to be harmed, and take metrics. So here's the other thing. If you don't measure it, you don't know. And that's your weight, that's your body fat percentage, it's your muscle percentage, it's knowing what your highest heart rate would be. These things are all important. I call it general acts of exercise is what I see often, and there's no plan to it. So take the time to find somebody to help you to really plan out what you do based upon your goals and your health. And that would be about as specific as I can get. Yes?
I just want to ask,
No, but I do have a media person who told me I have to get a YouTube channel, so I am working on it. I do, and I do have on there, I just wrote a blog about pretty much what I just covered regarding muscle. So it's retro-fit.com, and feel free to go out and check it, and you can also send me questions.
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. All right, well, thank you. Betcha.
I just wanted to thank Peggy and give her a plant because she's helping us grow, and that's my whole thing.
You're welcome.
You took your chair.
Oh, yeah.